prevent and think about things before they start versus trying to treat something and reverse it once it's already kind of full blown. So we work to keep cognitive health optimized and your wellness optimized. But if there is something that you're dealing with, if there is a health issue, even if it's not a cognitive one, we really work to find the root cause. That's what functional medicine is all about. It's finding the why. Why are you experiencing symptoms? Not just putting a Band-Aid on the symptoms or giving a pill and that's it. So that's what functional medicine is all about. That's what we do here at Kemper Cognitive Wellness. And as we go along this presentation, if you are a note taker, great, grab the pen and a paper. If you are not, don't worry, rest assured, we will be recording this and we will be posting this up to our YouTube channel. We also have a lot of previously recorded webinars there. So if you missed anything, we just wrapped up a 5-part webinar series. We'll have that up there and some other tools as well. So feel free to check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Today, I just want to put up this disclaimer. While I am a healthcare professional, I am not your specific practitioner. I don't know your medical history, the medication. So please, this is for informational and educational purposes only. If you're considering taking the advice or practicing something that I'm going to mention, please seek the advice of your physician or come and see us for a one-on-one at Kemper Cognitive Wellness, and we can certainly guide you in the best direction. So we are going to talk all about the gut-brain connection. You may have heard the gut referred to as a second brain. That's been very common lately, or things like a healthy gut, a healthy you. Hippocrates actually said all disease begins in the gut, and he goes even further than that, saying a bad digestion is the root of all evil. Death sits in the bowel. So, 400 BC, Hippocrates was already very aware that there was a big connection between our gut health and the rest of the body, including the brain. So I'm going to take you through today a little bit deeper on how the gut and brain are connected. We're going to talk about how they communicate with each other. We're going to get into why a damaged gut is bad for the brain and why a damaged brain is bad for the gut. We're going to talk about certain testing you can get for food sensitivities, and then get into diet. Of course, that's my area of expertise, so I always want to talk about how foods impact the health of our gut, and then also finish with some healing supplements that I think will be helpful as well. So how prevalent are GI issues? 70% of Americans are burdened with a GI issue. If you are not specifically dealing with one, someone very close to you is. And sometimes we don't always talk about it. We don't always go to a doctor to get something diagnosed, but the majority of Americans are experiencing a gut issue. The most common are things like heartburn or reflux, pain, stomach aches, bloating, and then changes in bowel, diarrhea, constipation, IBS type issues. So very prevalent that we're dealing with GI upset and GI issues in the United States. We're also dealing with a lot of cognitive issues, a lot of disorders of the mood and mind, from minor cognitive issues like attention and focus. Many of us have, walked into a room, forgot why we were there, but it can happen more and more. We just feel like we're not as sharp as we once were. We kind of have that cloud, that brain fog that we feel like we aren't, our brain just isn't working as well as it once was. And then there are more severe things. There are mood issues, depression and anxiousness. About 40 million Americans have an anxiety disorder. And there's mild cognitive impairment. This is kind of just the first step. If someone is experiencing, you've probably noticed maybe a parent or someone and you're thinking they just aren't remembering things like they used to. And that's mild cognitive impairment. And then there's dementia and Alzheimer's, which is the most severe form of dementia. 1 in 4 American adults have a diagnosable mental health disorder, and 5.8 million adults have Alzheimer's disease. And there's a lot more that are dealing with these minor cognitive issues that they just feel like there's really not much that maybe we could do about it. A lot of attention and focus right now, a lot of books out. You've probably heard of Grain Brain, which looks at the connection between grains and gluten and wheat and the health of our brain. Brain Maker, which is by Dr. Perlmutter as well, that talks about more on our microbiome. We're going to get into that. And then there's all these other books just out there looking at mind-gut connection. So how does our gut and our brain communicate? There are a few different pathways. We're going to get into some of these a little bit deeper. Our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, which is the vagus nerve, is a big part of that. Then there's the enteric nervous system, which is what really gets nicknamed the second brain, that lies in the gut lining. There's the hypothalamic pituitary axis. This is what you maybe are or aren't aware is kind of like our stress axis. This is running things like cortisol and stress hormones and things like that, and that communicates with both the gut and the brain. And then our microbiome. A microbiome is this collection of all these bugs, microorganisms that are in not just the gut, but really everywhere on and in us. So we're going to get deeper into those. So let's start with the vagus nerve. You could see on the image here that yellow kind of wiry cable looking thing. That's the vagus nerve. It's really a wandering nerve. It doesn't just, I always had this fixed image that it was like this connection from A to B, and it's really not. It kind of wanders and shifts, and it has multiple sensory points along the way. So it's not just a direct connection brain and gut, but it's connected to a lot of things, a lot of different organs along the way. It's the major nerve of the parasympathetic nervous system. It goes from our medulla to the abdomen. And then it's responsible for everything from heart and abdominal organs. It plays a role in taste. It provides movement to the throat and soft palate. It regulates heart rhythm. It also regulates the GI tract. So that right there is a pretty direct connection between the vagus nerve, which runs from the brain to the stomach. Then we have our microbiome. So I mentioned the microbiome being in and on us. Over 50 trillion microbes. That's like a number that I can't quite grasp. It's really hard to think about what 50 trillion looks like, but we are more bacteria, we are more microbes than we are human. It's just that like the human cells are bigger, that's why we look like we do. But it's really interesting to hear that number, 10,000 to 35,000 different species and over 50 trillion microbes. Of course, these are going to play a role. Everything's here in our bodies and on us for a reason. Of course, that's going to play a role in the health of our whole body. Specifically, microbes actually communicate with the immune system and the brain. So when there's disruptions in the microbiome, that communication is lost and our immune system actually suffers. So if you've heard about probiotics, these are good bacteria that make up part of our microbiome. There's also beneficial yeast and other things. Not just bacteria, but I think when we talk about the microbiome, most people think about bacteria. But it's so important that they communicate with the immune system and the brain. They also help to ferment dietary fibers into short-chain fatty acids. And short-chain fatty acids are things like acetate, propionate, butyrate. Those are important in maintaining balance in the intestines. So these are, first of all, we need to eat dietary fibers, then they get fermented into these short-chain fatty acids, and then they have been shown to actually reduce GI upset and GI conditions like intestinal bowel disease. They're important fuel for the intestinal cells, and they really help with healing. So those are an important part that the microbiome, these microbes actually help to ferment our foods into these short-chain fatty acids, and we want that to happen. Microbes synthesize vitamins. You've probably heard about eating leafy greens for a source of K, but greens are a source of K1. They don't provide vitamin K2, and vitamin K2 is really more and more research is looking at the importance of vitamin K2 for bone health specifically and for decreasing arterial calcification, this buildup of calcium that we can get in our arteries that causes blockage. A lot of women especially are taking thousands of milligrams of calcium. That calcium doesn't automatically go to the bone. If you have K2, vitamin K2 acts like a little traffic cop, and it helps to direct that calcium into the bone. So it's critical. If you don't have enough probiotics, if you don't have enough good microbes, you're not making that conversion from your good foods into K2. Microbes produce neurotransmitters. I'm going to talk deeper about that on the next slide. And they also reduce inflammation. So these are very, very important parts of us. And there are many other functions. I just wanted to call a few of them out. So we want to keep our microbiome diverse, and we want to keep it flourishing and feed into it. And that will absolutely help all of these things that are going on deep inside our body. I see a question here, where do we get K2? Vitamin K2 directly mainly comes from fermented soy food called natto. In fact, if you pick up a vitamin K2 supplement, it will almost always say from soy or from natto. It's a very stringy fermented soy product that I've never had the pleasure of tasting. It's very popular in Japan and other Asian cultures. I've heard it's pretty pungent, not something that Americans would probably readily eating, unfortunately, but very good for us. That's really the main source. So we're not getting that. It is available in some aged cheeses, things like blue cheese. We can get some K2, but it's not that prevalent in our diet. But really important to have. We could eat leafy greens, and then if we have enough probiotics, it should make that conversion for us. So that's an important thing. So thank you for that question. Let's talk about the enteric nervous system. This is our second brain. It blows me away that it's two tiny little layers, but more than 100 million nerve cells that are lining the gut. Our gut, our intestines, really the surface area, I think I've read, could cover a tennis court. It's really huge if we were to unroll everything and look at just how much surface area is there. So to have all of these nerve cells lining this gut that help with these neurotransmitters, these chemical messengers that are really kind of the drivers between different actions that different body systems have. You've probably heard of some of these neurotransmitters like serotonin. When you hear the word serotonin, I believe most of us think of happy. It's like the feel-good neurotransmitter, right? Probiotics in our enteric nervous system is a main source of that. 90% of the serotonin in the body is produced not in the brain, in the gut. So we have to keep our guts healthy if we want to fight things like depression and anxiety, because if our gut is damaged, we're not producing these feel-good chemicals like we thought. And this is really exciting that we're figuring this out, because we always thought it's a brain issue, and this is not. This is a gut issue. If you're having depression, if you're having issues of mood and mind, let's look at the gut. There are other things, of course, but gut health is an absolutely critical place to start. Okay, I see another question. Sorry, where do we get K2 from food products? So natto, which is a fermented soy, probably not readily available in most supermarkets here, but it's big in Asian cultures. And then things like blue cheese and other aged cheeses are decent sources. But ideally, what I would prefer, rather than eating a hunk of blue cheese, eat lots of leafy greens and make sure you've got good fermented foods that are feeding into your good bacteria so that they can do the conversion for you. Or there are supplements available as well. And you can get soy-free. If you have a soy allergy, you can find a K2 supplement. Sometimes they do it from chickpeas or another place that is free of soy. So those are the main places you'll get vitamin K2. Okay, so let's talk about problems in the gut and what happens. Sorry, I see another question. Tofu is fermented soy. No, tofu is not fermented. Tofu is soy, but tempeh is a fermented version of soy. Tofu is not fermented. Okay, so leaky gut. Leaky gut is a major issue. It's not something that's easily tested. It's not like go to the doctor, get a blood test for this leaky gut thing, and then they tell you, yep, you have it. No, you don't. It's very complicated. There are some gut tests that you can do, typically like a stool test, and we do those here at Kemper Cognitive Wellness that could help inform us. What do your short-chain fatty acids look like? What kind of pathogens are you exposed to? What's going on with some of your microbiome? Far too complicated to know everything. We don't have a great test to look at every single thing in detail, but that's some of the testing available to see if your gut looks more like what it does on the left, where you're having these very tight junctions that's keeping all of those bad things out, toxins and these pathogens and gluten and other foods that you don't want to get into the bloodstream, or if the gut is damaged at all, it's allowing all of these things into the bloodstream that we do not want there. And when it gets in there, it causes so many different symptoms. It's very, very destructive for the whole body. Poor diet, food sensitivities, toxins, having dysbiosis. Dysbiosis is a disruption in the microbiome. So you may have too many bad microbes versus having more probiotic, healthy, good microbes. So it's important to have a balance and not have this dysbiosis. If you've heard of things like SIBO, S-I-B-O, that's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, that can be something that can be tested for, and that's an indication of dysbiosis, where we're having a lot of bad bacteria. We need more good, but we need to get rid of the bad as well. Really interesting, TBI is traumatic brain injury, and there are many studies that look at when someone has a brain injury. If you have a fall, if you've had a concussion, if someone plays sports and they're playing football, they're getting hit a lot, it is actually damaging the gut. And I think that is just so, like, such a phenomenon. But more research that's going into it is finding out, oh yeah, someone's had a head injury, that causes a ton of disruptions and can fuel things like leaky gut and damage. So now we've had a brain injury, now our gut is damaged. So it's just like this vicious cycle then, where we're gonna, you know, if we're not attending to things that are healing the gut, it's just going to get worse and worse, tons of inflammation. And we now are looking at the fact that not only is there leaky gut, so our gut, our intestinal lining could be damaged and looking like what you see on the right of this image. We also are looking at the brain and the barrier to the brain, this blood-brain barrier that is damaged. And so there's this whole concept of leaky brain. So are we doing things that are damaging the gut lining that is also damaging this barrier to the brain? And we don't want toxins to get there. We don't want these pathogens to get up to the brain. That is just destructive and causing a lot of cognitive issues. So sometimes we will see at Temper Cognitive Wellness, if someone has a history of head injuries, we will also start attending to the gut and trying to heal that, because if not, cognitive issues start to really snowball and get worse and worse. So it really just speaks to this whole body, fixing the whole person, not just one thing or the other. So really, really important to attend to all of those things. So what can we do? I talked about chronic stress being an issue for not just leaky gut, but for brain health as well. We know that when you're stressed, you're not sleeping as well, you're having certain hormones in the body like cortisol in excess, and that causes high blood pressure, could affect blood sugar. It's a whole damaging cycle with stress. When you're stressed, you just don't think as clear. If someone's very overwhelmed, that's like the time that you lock your keys in the car. Anytime I'm in a hurry, I lose my keys. You know, I'm like rushing around, I got to get out the door. You've probably all been there. So when that stress happens all the time, if you're a person that just feels like you're dealing with a lot, maybe something traumatic has happened, or it's just daily life, that you're not taking time to do these stress management techniques, that will affect gut, that will affect brain. So what can we do about it to manage the stress? There are breathing techniques. I know Allison, our wonderful health coach, has made videos, and those are available on that YouTube channel that I talked about in the beginning, and she'll take you through some of these breathing techniques. Two of my favorite are 4, 7, 8. This was developed by Dr. Andrew Weil. You basically inhale through your nose for a count of 4. You're going to hold it for 7, and then you exhale through your mouth for a count of 8. So inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale through the mouth for 8. And you do that for like 4 or 5 times in a row. It doesn't matter if you can't hold your breath that long, you can go faster, but as long as the ratio stays 4, 7, 8. Even easier is boxed breathing. Boxed breathing is you pick a number. Most people find a comfortable place to start is 4 seconds. And you inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold it out for 4. So it's this box: inhale, hold, exhale, hold. You can, as you practice this, and I kind of laughed when someone said I'd need to practice breathing. I could not find that to be more true. When I first started, I was like really out of breath at 4, and now I found that I can get to longer and longer. And these great yogis of the world and people that are really practicing this stuff maybe can do 4 cycles in a minute or something crazy that I don't know that I'll ever be able to achieve. I hope so if I keep practicing, but start with 4 and just keep doing it every day, a couple times a day. Breathing is free. Breathing does not take very long to do. You can do it when you get into bed at night as a way to just kind of reset. If you're stressed, you know, someone cuts you off and you're driving, do these breathing techniques. We need these moments of kind of coming down and helping our vagus nerve, helping the parasympathetic nervous system, and really managing stress. Exercise, of course, you know, I always have to mention the E word because it really is a great way to manage stress. There are also a lot of studies that support exercise as an antidepressant. It may not be the only solution for some, but for many, exercising really promotes feel-good chemicals, and that's a great way to manage stress as well. And it's good for the brain, so why not? Gratitude journal. This is where you're focusing more on the positive. Couple things a day. I saw a beautiful flower. The sun was out today. A lot of what I write, you know, things my kids said that were funny or cute, or yesterday my son made me breakfast out of nowhere. He's 8, and it was berries and olives, and it was just really adorable. And like, I wrote that down. I'm like, I want to remember this. So, you know, writing those things down, not only in that moment of thinking about positive, does that help? Then you can go back and look through it, and you have this whole collection of all these great things. We are bombarded with negativity, you know, news. How many news stories are positive? You read the newspaper. How many things in there are good? It's like major stressors. So, you know, thinking about and being in tune with positivity, the more positives you have and you say aloud, it actually rewires the brain. And that will help to kind of continue this cycle of managing stress, but also helping the brain. Toning the vagus nerve, there are different things you can do, breathing and certain sounds you can make, singing. There's a lot that goes into toning the vagus nerve, and that will strengthen and then stimulate that connection between the brain and the stomach. That's what we want. And then DNRS, this is dynamic neural retraining system. It's another kind of way to retrain the brain. And when someone is having a lot of gut issues, this is an interesting way to, rather than changing diet, rather than focusing on the gut, you're doing this system, which is, it's a drug-free, it's like a step-by-step program that helps to build more functional neural pathways, increase brain plasticity, and it changes, like it rewires our brain, and that then goes into the gut and increases the health of the gut. It is incredible when I have clients go through a DNRS course, how much their food sensitivities and foods that were made problematic before changes so they don't have the same thing afterwards. And they think, how can this be? I can't believe that doing these like neural retraining exercises is affecting my GI, you know, system so much. And it does. It's really an incredible thing. So those are things that, you know, at Kemper we have available, and we can get you some information on how to get a hold of those as well. But start with the breathing. If you're not doing anything like that, take a moment when it's nice out, do it outside. That's a great way to manage stress and heal the gut. Food. Food is also a really important player in the health of our gut. I always talk about, whenever I do a seminar on food, this concept that everything you are putting into your body does one of 2 things. It is either helping us or it's harming you. There's no neutral foods. So there's nothing that you're eating that the body just goes, okay, it's not helping me, it's not hurting me really. It's doing one of those 2 things. So how much of what you're putting in your body is helping you? How much of what you're putting in is actually hurting you? Your body without good nutrition, and I would say without great nutrition, because I have a lot of clients that say, I eat pretty good. Pretty good is probably very, very high in processed foods still. And that's what we want to kind of get rid of, because when we do eat a lot of those foods, your body is more prone to fatigue. our immune system is greatly suppressed. So if we have stress and we're eating a poor diet, you're just asking to get, you know, some sort of infection or chronic issue, really. And then poor performance. If we're not putting the nutrition in, it leaves us more susceptible for chronic disease, but day-to-day performance is affected as well. Food really influences a lot of things, both positively and negatively, on both the brain and the gut. The good news is most of the foods that are good for the brain are also good for the gut and good for the heart and good for your joints. So it's a win-win-win all the way around, that you're doing things that are helping all of those various body systems. So let's talk specifically what foods are going to heal the gut. Of course, I'm going to talk about fruits and vegetables. Vegetables should be the majority of our diet. Why? They are providing a ton of good nutrients. One of the most damaging things to the gut and to the brain is oxidative stress. Oxidative stress can be protected against when we're eating good foods, but also when we're having high antioxidant foods. So your dark berries, your blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, pomegranates even, those are really high in antioxidants and great for protecting both the health of the gut and the brain. And then vegetables, your dark leafy greens, your cruciferous vegetables, broccoli and Brussels sprouts and cauliflower and cabbage, those are all going to help detox, be good for the gut because they're providing good fiber. Fiber's feeding the microbiome. It's decreasing inflammation. Those are all really positive effects. So most of your diet, you don't have to be vegetarian or vegan. I'm personally not. I think it's wonderful if you are, but you don't have to be 100% a vegetable fruit eater all day, but it should be the majority of what you're eating. Think of meat, think of poultry and fish as more of a condiment, smaller size, the size of your palm, maybe once a day, instead of, bacon and sausage with breakfast and then a big sandwich for lunch and then, steak and potatoes for dinner. And that's what we typically are doing. So get more of those fruits and vegetables in. Cook with more herbs and spices. Why? They are really critical for antioxidants and anti-inflammatory components. Ginger, turmeric, rosemary, oregano, thyme, garlic. These are all critically important for brain and gut to help decrease that inflammation that is detrimental for both. Healthy fats help lubricate the gut. They help decrease inflammation as well. So avocado oil, olive oil, and wild fish. Those are your best kind of, if I had to pick three, I would pick those three as sources. We want a lot of omega-3s that are important for the brain, but we're also seeing that omega-3s are helping to heal gut because of that decrease in inflammation. So really important as well. We want to make sure we are eating prebiotic foods. So I talked about probiotics. Probiotics are the actual good bacteria or good yeast, the good microbes. We need to feed those. They're hungry. Interestingly enough, sugars feed the bad stuff. Prebiotic fibers feed the good more. So it's important to eat a diet rich in prebiotics. What is a prebiotic? Pretty much any food that's giving you fiber. So if it's got fiber in it, it most likely is a prebiotic. I put some on here that are probably the most well-known: garlic and onion and cabbage, jicama, which if you've never cooked with that, it's kind of like, you could replace a potato with it. It's a root vegetable and it's a very neutral taste. So you can make like jicama fries. I've seen jicama chips and things like that. And apples, all great prebiotics. So you want to then add fermented foods. Why? Because fermented foods are giving you the microbes. So you get good bacteria and then you feed it with the prebiotic. And that is what helps a microbiome flourish in a good way. We want to really make sure we are eating those foods every day. I specifically chose fermented foods that are dairy-free. I did not include yogurt. I did not include kefir for a reason, because a lot of people have issues with dairy foods. And I wanted to show you that there are other foods that provide probiotics that are not dairy. Kombucha, you can find that in every grocery store. It is a fermented tea, and it is, you got to watch the sugar. If it's got over 12 grams of sugar in a container, I would choose a different brand. It's very vinegary tasting. I personally love it, but it is an acquired taste. It's not necessarily something that I think everyone would be running to, but it can be really helpful for you. Sauerkraut. Interestingly enough, of course, American diets, Most of the sauerkraut that is sold in supermarkets that's on the shelf isn't actually fermented. The same thing, I wrote fermented cucumbers instead of pickles on here, which is kind of a weird way to say it, but pickles aren't mostly in a brine, they're just in salt water. You are not getting probiotics if something is just salted water. You have to go to the refrigerated section, and probably more of your health-oriented grocery stores will have these, but I've seen it in some of the regular grocery stores as well. Go to the cold section, like in a cooler, and then that's where you'll find pickles, kimchi, sauerkraut, truly fermented. And it will, these companies that are doing it right know it, so they will definitely write it on there if it's been fermented. I see someone asking about apple cider vinegar. Yes, apple cider vinegar is fermented. Absolutely. So that's a great thing. Fermented foods help our digestion as well. So they're not just giving us probiotics, they're actually helping with digestion and providing good nutrients. When a food is fermented, it decreases the allergens and it increases the nutrients. So wonderfully therapeutic foods there.
Nikki, in terms of healthy fats, we had a question about flaxseed.
Yeah, so flaxseed, I would consider flaxseed a healthy fat as well. It's just not, I was thinking more like cooking things, but I like flax seeds. Flax seeds are not a replacement as far as the omega-3 content to fish. And this question comes up often, and I'm guessing that's what you're kind of asking about. Does flax, is that enough to replace the omega-3s that are found in wild fish? If someone is not eating wild fish 3 times a week, you are probably deficient in omega-3s. Even if you're eating a lot of these plant sources like hemp seeds and chia seeds and flax seeds. They are all wonderful. I eat all of those. I think they're great, but they are not a replacement for omega-3s because they have to convert into something before they convert into the actual active omega-3 DPA, DHA, and EPA. So when you look at flax seeds or when you look at flax oil, you can't see how much DHA and EPA is in there because they have to be converted into something first. And so they are not a replacement for wild fish, but if you are vegetarian or vegan, you could get an algae-based oil supplement. So like an omega-3 that is from algae. So it's plant sourced, but unlike flax, it is a direct source of EPA and DHA. So if you're vegan or vegetarian, I would highly consider doing a algae sourced supplement rather than just using seeds. The seeds are still great for fiber and for other things. So I encourage you to still eat them, but when you're talking about omega-3, wild fish is really better, or an algae oil. What amount of apple cider vinegar per day? I see another question on that. That is completely individual. I don't think there's no like daily allowance for it. I would say be careful with apple cider vinegar if you have any sort of reflux issues or if you've had any damage in the esophagus, because having that, you know, on your teeth and in your esophagus can be a little harsh for some people. It's okay for me. I can do some of it. I would say a couple tablespoons after you eat. I really like to just incorporate it into like a salad dressing or into my cooking rather than like doing a shot of it. I think for a lot of people, they add a ton of water and they put a little bit of apple cider vinegar. But if you do less water and more apple cider vinegar and do it with a meal, it will actually help your digestion. So that's my favorite way to utilize apple cider vinegar, or make a salad dressing with olive oil, garlic, apple cider vinegar, salt and pepper. Like, it's the simplest thing. It's delicious. You don't need a recipe. You can do what your taste, I like heavier on the vinegar, but you could kind of do whatever your taste preference is. And it's one of the easiest, cleanest ways to get apple cider vinegar in and eat a good salad dressing. And then you're having your greens with it. So there you go.
Nikki, you have one last question. Can you, if they pickle their own, if they, you know, can their own pickles in vinegar and salt, is that fermented enough?
I think it would depend on the vinegar that they're using. If they're doing like a good apple cider vinegar, that could be probably enough. I've heard of some people when they do can, I've never done this myself, but they will add a little bit of a probiotic like powder or supplement in with what they're canning or jarring, because that will then increase the fermentation. But that, yeah, as long as it's not just salt and water, adding that vinegar, especially if it's like an apple cider vinegar, where you could actually see, they call it the mother, you could actually see some sediment in there that's these good bacteria. So that's what we want. So if you're using a good fermented vinegar, then yes, I would say that would be a good way to do it. Okay, so those are foods that heal. You know, you can't get away from one of my webinars without me talking about refined sugar and processed foods. It's just, you know, no book will say, hey, eat more sugar, eat more processed foods. We know these are damaging, and you all know this already. I just want to talk about deeper just what it does. It actually causes changes in our microbiome because it's not, remember when I said they're feeding those bad bacteria, and it's changing, it's shifting our microbiome and contributing to dysbiosis. And that can really take its toll on the gut and the brain. It damages the gut lining. So talk about promoting leaky gut. Refined sugar and processed foods are doing that, which means they're also contributing to leaky brain. They're promoting inflammation, high blood sugar, oxidative stress. These are all these major, Dr. Bergman calls them dementigens, these things that are increasing our risk for dementia and for having brain issues. Alzheimer's has been called type 3 diabetes because we know that having high blood sugar and having a insulin resistance highly contributes and fuels this type of dementia. So I can't say it enough to limit as much as you can. Do I still eat some dark chocolate with sugar in it? Yes, I do. Do I still have some things that may be processed? Like I'll eat these tortilla chips that are made from like tiger nuts and other like whole grains. They're still processed though. They feel a little bit better than like a bag of Fritos, but they're still processed. But most of my diet is not from those things. Most is from, you know, what we talked about on the previous slide, fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and good fats and fermented foods if you can. So these are minimal, but 65% of Americans are the other way. 65% of the diet is from, or I'm sorry, the most of the diet is from these processed and refined foods. We are eating out daily. We are buying things, frozen dinners, and all of these shortcuts that we feel like we don't have enough time in the day to actually make a meal. I always say if you could open a bag of chips, you can open a bag of lettuce and you can make yourself a nice salad. Not always as fun, you know, you just have to get used to it, but try to get off the sugars. The best place to start is looking at your beverages. If you are a soda drinker, if you are a juice drinker, juice is not a health food, even though it gets marketed as that. If you are using things like Gatorade, Gatorade is great if you're a football player or a marathon runner. If you are not, you do not need it. Most people that are working out for a half hour or an hour have no need for something like Gatorade. It is more of a sugar replacer. So be really, really careful with the beverages first. That's the easiest place to start. I am thrilled. I have my father is, I always tell people, he is the worst eater I've ever met. I've been a dietitian for a long time, and I've had many looks at different diaries, and my dad is just sugaraholic, and he is on day 4 of no soda. So I'm really excited about that. We're trying to celebrate it. And he told me yesterday, when am I going to feel good? When is this good feeling going to kick in? And I was just laughing, but it's really an important thing if you can. I see a question here, how about Manuka honey? I do like Manuka honey. If you're going to do honey, Manuka is very healing, but it's still sugar. So if someone's diabetic, even though Manuka honey has antimicrobial properties to it, it's good for when you're sick, if you get a sore throat. I've used like masks. It's really good for the skin too. But it's still, if that's your only source of sugar, great. But I think for most people, it's like, oh, I'm going to have a tablespoon of honey, and then I'm still using all of these refined sugar and processed foods. So if Manuka honey is really the only place you're getting sugar from, then I think that's fine to continue to use. That won't be enough to offset anything. I see another question. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's all right. They were just asking if, can a healthy gut improve cognitive issues like dyslexia and ADHD as well?
I cannot speak on dyslexia, but because I just haven't read anything specifically. That'd be a great question, and I can certainly follow up with Dr. Bergman to see if he's experienced anything like that. But ADHD, for sure, absolutely. We see there has been a lot of research looking at ADHD, looking at autism, looking at some of these other issues that are, you know, making a connection to what we're eating and the state of the gut health. So changing the gut health can then improve those symptoms for sure. Is it the only thing? No, there's never just one answer. So it's definitely something that you'll have to work probably from multiple angles, but certainly not going to hurt to improve the diet. You know, it's worth a shot, I think. And the amount of sugars that kids are eating these days, it's so devastating to me because, you know, adults are eating a lot, but kids are eating 3 times as much. And from our breakfast cereals that are marketed to them to the chips and pretzels and even the fishy crackers and all of these processed foods that we're just giving to our kids, soda, juices, like, you know, it starts very early on, and that sets them up for these habits long term. So you've got to try to balance that as much as possible. And if your kid is willing, you don't want to create too much stress. I'm very careful because I do have young children in not wanting them to feel the opposite with food, where it's like it's too restrictive and then they don't feel like they are living and they're missing out on so many things. So there is a balance, but it's worth it if you explain, if the child is old enough that they can understand why you're asking them to make these changes. It is certainly worth a try, and I have seen great things when it comes to mental health improvements. How about maple syrup from our backyard tree? That's exciting. You have a maple producing tree that you know what to do with. Again, yeah, maple syrup, even though it's natural, it's still a sweetener. It's still a source of sugar. So I think we get in this thought process that, oh, it's natural, you know, it's honey, it's maple syrup, it's the good stuff, it's the organic honey, it's the real maple syrup. It is still sugar. So the benefits of those foods are still outweighed by how sweet that they are. It will still spike blood sugar immediately. And even one instance of high blood sugar starts to harm the brain. So I'm very careful about the amount of sugar that goes in, and don't think because it's natural that you can just use it in excess. Moderation, balance, a tablespoon here and there, that would be fine. Fruit is fine, you know, if that's your source of sugar. The problem is we're doing all of these corn syrups and sweetened beverages and all these things on top of it. So I think you get it by now. I will shut up about sugars, but just really something that we want to try to limit as much as we can.
Nikki, can we address one other question or two actually about sugar, and then we can move on?
Absolutely.
So Melinda's wondering, since most people will eat sugar, for example, like a birthday party cake, is there anything we can do throughout the course of the day to counter the effects?
So fiber is really good at countering effects of sugar. So if you have just a simple, like orange juice, which really has nothing else in it, it's a super source of sugar. That is going to cause a lot more damage than if you were to eat an orange, because there's fiber, because there's other parts of it that slows down the way it gets in the body. And that's what we want to do. We want to slow down and kind of balance this blood sugar versus like, wham, it goes up and then we crash down. And that's really what fuels disease. So if you have birthday cake, one, don't forget that one instance, and like one, if it's rare, if it's truly at a birthday party or a wedding or something like that, that one time isn't going to cause all of the destruction and set you back years. You know, get right back on then at the next meal. Was the rest of your day wonderful? Did you have a lot of fruits and vegetables, and did you have a lot of good fats and a lot of high fiber foods? Then you could have some birthday cake. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to make sure what the most of what we're eating is the good stuff, if that makes sense. So I would say if you're having birthday cake, fill up on veggies at dinner, and that can help to slow down some of the effects of that birthday cake. There's really nothing to like shield it completely, but that will help for sure.
Thanks, Nikki. So the second part of the question from Melinda is, how does wine fall into this? Is it sugar?
Yes. So wine, okay, so wine is sugar. Wine is tricky because wine is also a fermented food. The difference between grape juice and wine is that the grapes have been fermented. And I think we would all agree, completely different tastes, completely different nutrient profiles. The amount of resveratrol and other polyphenols when we have wine, that fermented version, is amplified. We still are dealing with alcohol, so alcohol is still going to be a neurotoxin and can be not a great thing, but one glass of wine, and by a glass, I don't mean some of these, 8 to 10 ounce glasses that I've seen some of my friends come out with, a 4 to 6 ounce glass of wine seems to be good for the heart, seems to promote good health, but doesn't seem to be as damaging. If someone really has cognitive issues, I would say don't have any. But as far as the sugar content, if kombucha still has some naturally occurring sugar, it's the same idea. So balance that out. If that's your main source of sugar is that glass of wine, what you're having with it or the rest of the day should help to offset the sugar that's in there. I do see another question. So what is the sugar alternate? One, does there have to be? It probably yes, because as Americans, we are so used to it. I love when I have clients that come from other countries and they look at me and they say, why is your food so sweet? Why is the bread have sugar in it? The tomato sauce has sugar. I've gained 40 pounds and I'm eating the same foods, but it's what we're putting in our food. So I would say if you have to have an alternative, we have to work on changing your addiction possibly to sugar, or changing our dependence on having sweet all the time. If you've ever done a elimination diet or something like Whole30 or Prolon, which is a fasting mimicking diet, it really sensitizes you again to sugar. If anybody's been on a low salt diet and then they try to eat at a restaurant, they're like, it's so shocking to taste it. You don't want something that sweet or that salty anymore. The same thing happens with sugar. So when we are looking constantly for how to make things sweet in a safe way, I would say, can we decrease it just altogether? Yes, you can use things like stevia. You can use other types of natural sweet. Coconut sugar has less impact on blood sugar, but it still tastes sweet. We're still going to be depending on it, and it really interrupts things. So no amount is great. I can't change that. I know it always makes me the bad guy, and people are like, I'm not giving up sugar. You don't have to give it up, but can we cut it back, or can we just add in the stuff that you may not be eating? Let's get in more vegetables. Keep the same amount of sugar. Let's add more vegetables in. Maybe that will be a start. So moderation, guys, if you can, but there really isn't any magical food that tastes sweet, that won't mess with brain chemicals or the gut. Stevia, I would say, is probably the safest out there that we know of right now. Okay. So one other thing that I mentioned causes leaky gut are food sensitivities. And this is I am a certified leap therapist. I have had extra training in food sensitivities. It is a passion of mine that came from a very personal place because I've dealt with a lot of food sensitivities over, my years. And the difference between a allergy, sensitivity, and an intolerance, I just want to straighten that out. So an allergy, what I refer to like a type 1 IgE mediated, not that you need to know that, but a true allergy is what I refer to as when someone has like a peanut allergy, like an anaphylactic. It's immediate. The reaction happens within 30 minutes and it's life-threatening. But there are also sensitivities. Sensitivities are usually a milder effect. They can be delayed up to 2 or 3 days, and they still involve the immune system. So like an allergy, a sensitivity is still causing inflammation, causing an immune reaction. The difficult thing with a sensitivity is there isn't just one symptom. Symptoms are headaches and migraine sufferers, autoimmune issues. For me, it was asthma and respiratory symptoms. Some people get skin issues like eczema. They are so varied. Others, it promotes like IBS symptoms. They're running to a bathroom after they eat a certain trigger food. Those are indicative. If you have any of the symptoms I've mentioned, that could mean you have a sensitivity to a food. Common foods are gluten, eggs, dairy, soy, but it can be anything. And I'll talk more about just why that is in a little bit. Whereas an intolerance is a lack of an enzyme to break down the food. it does not involve the immune system at all. There's no inflammation kind of being provoked afterwards. It just, you get a bad stomach. It changes your bowels. You can't break down these foods. So you need to add that enzyme back in, or you need to eliminate the food completely. Gluten intolerance, lactose intolerance are very, very common. So ideally, you're eliminating dairy food if you're lactose intolerant, or some people will take a pill. They'll take like an enzyme that replaces that lactase so that they can break down the food better. So that's the difference. The sensitivity, you can't take anything to decrease the sensitivity for the most part. It's different than an intolerance. Some people have both, and it can be difficult. But just if you've got tested for an intolerance and you don't have one, it does not mean you don't have a sensitivity. And the best example would be something like gluten. There's celiac disease, which is like an autoimmune, like the most severe case. Then there's a gluten sensitivity. And then there's just those that don't break it down well. So there's all these different parts and places that you can have issues with foods causing symptoms. What can you do if you think you have a sensitivity? Probably the gold standard would be something like an elimination diet. And this is something, if you're ever interested, I can take you through. You can come see us at Kemper Cognitive Wellness and make a nutrition appointment, and we can talk about going through a standard elimination diet. Elimination diets can be slightly varied depending on who you talk to, but for the most part, they are free of all of these things. So all of these major components that a lot of people seem to have sensitivities to. Gluten, wheat, dairy, sugar, eggs, shellfish, and nuts are the big ones. This is a gold standard, meaning if you eliminate these completely and you are truly strict with it, and then you start reintroducing them one at a time, that's the key, you will see if you experience a negative effect from that food. You can't cheat at all. It's very time consuming, like it's months and months of being off of these foods, and then when we reintroduce them, it's one every like 4 or 5 days. Like it's very slow of a process. So the downside is it's time consuming, but also it may not eliminate your specific trigger food. And I mentioned myself having all of these food sensitivities. I did an elimination diet 12 years ago. I knew there were foods provoking symptoms for me. And when I started to reintroduce, wheat and gluten were a very obvious right away, like my stomach swelled up, like it was just uncomfortable. I noticed right away it was gluten, but I still, I eliminated gluten, still wasn't feeling great after it. And that is because, just because it's other people's major triggers does not mean it's yours. And I dug in and for 2 years researched food sensitivity testing. It took me that long because there's a lot of bias against them. There are a lot of health practitioners that say, oh, what you eat doesn't matter. This is not a real thing. For me, it was life-changing. For many of my clients, it's life-changing. If you are experiencing symptoms of a food sensitivity, to have a blood test, and the test I love is mediator release testing, that quantifies the immune response that you're getting from foods. What an easier way to go. I can actually see in my blood what's causing a symptom, and that's what I eliminate, versus could be gluten, it could be eggs, it could be this, it may not be. For me, broccoli, lentils, beef, and lecithin, which is a food component that's in like chocolate and soy and egg yolks and things like that. Those were my main ones. I never would have figured that out. Oh, and quinoa was another one. These are very healthy foods. These are good for me foods, so I wasn't thinking about eliminating them. For me, they were triggers. I only would find that out through a blood test. What makes MRT better, though, than some of the other tests out there, and I'm thinking mainly of IgG. If you've ever heard of IgG testing, you may have said, oh yeah, I did allergy testing before. But it's very different because it's looking at this endpoint reaction. It's looking to see, was a reaction taken place, not just was IgG an influence in this, because not every food sensitivity reaction involves IgG, and there can be false positives on an IgG type test, like an LCAT, for example. So I personally have used MRT over those types of testing because it's very comprehensive, 170 foods and food chemicals. There's a ton of foods that are tested. I think I put them, let me see here. Yeah, I have them here if you can see them all. How specific this is. It's not just looking at cow's milk, though cow's milk is on here, it's also looking at American cheese and cottage cheese and whey, and looking at all these different components of dairy and different foods that have dairy in them. So you could be sensitive to one, but not necessarily the other. Very specific. It also looks at food chemicals. Lecithin, I mentioned, was one for me. There's also other food chemicals that are naturally occurring, and some are added. So you know what foods you could stay away from then. And what I also like about this test, let me see if I could go back, is you find out your safe foods. These green foods over here, that's what we could build a diet around. We know that these foods are not provoking a sensitivity type reaction. So we can focus more on eating those foods and rotating those in versus these other reactive yellow or highly reactive red foods. And that's what I think really sets this test apart. I am so excited. I have done this test for years and years. They have never, ever, ever done a sale on it. So I am really excited that they are, because I think of COVID and some of the other things going on, the economic burden that people are dealing with right now, they have discounted this test 20%. So it's regular $4.99 plus the lab draw fee. It's right now $100 off, $3.99. I've never seen this and will probably never see this again. This is through June 19th. If you have ever considered food sensitivity testing, this would be an amazing time to do that. You can call us at the number on the screen if you're interested. You could find out more. I'm happy to talk with you about it and give you more information on it. And you get not only the results, you get a huge booklet that talks about recipes and gets into sensitivities a little bit deeper and talks about different food chemicals. And then I will personally go through your results with you. It's a 30-minute results review where we can talk through some things. You could also choose to add on nutrition consults, and we can go into a full-blown elimination diet based off of your specific results. So that's an option as well. But in that $3.99 price, you get the results, the booklet, and the 30-minute review. This testing is not covered under insurance. I see a question about that. I get asked that all the time. Unfortunately, most insurance companies do not recognize food sensitivities as being medically critically important. I and my clients, I think, would greatly argue, because I've gotten people off of medications, transform their health just by using food sensitivity testing. So it's not the answer for everyone by any means, but for certain symptoms, it can really be life-changing. And things can change. It's not like you get one test and for the rest of the life, that's what you go off of. Things can change. I am now able to eat things like broccoli again because I eliminated them for so long, they came down on my next test. So unfortunately, that would be the price, would be $3.99. It would not be covered by insurance.
Nikki, do you think that FSA and HSA accounts would cover this test?
I do. I think FSA and HSA should cover these tests. Absolutely. You could certainly contact your personal providers, but that I have seen many times. It can be used with one of those cards. So you can definitely try to use those, FSA or HSA. Okay, so that's food sensitivity. That's another wonderful thing that you can do. I want to talk, I know we're over time now, but let me just talk real quick about supplements for the gut. Supplements, I love this image. I've used this before. It is, supplements are not a replacement for a healthy diet. You cannot supplement your way out of eating well. So if you're not eating well, don't grab supplements because you think they're an easy fix. Work on your diet first. Work on stress management first. Those are the low-hanging fruits. Those are the things that we know make a difference. Once you're doing those things, and then you're thinking about what else can I do to fill in gaps, or I need some additional support, that's when we can turn to supplements. Before I go on, I see a question. What do I think about skin testing used by an allergy doctor? Skin testing, like a RAS test, the skin pricks are not accurate for foods. It is a completely different pathway. They are wonderful for environmental allergens, dogs, cats, trees, pollen, those kinds of things. Skin testing is great. But I think even an allergist, hopefully they should say this to you, but I suppose every doctor is different. it is a completely different pathway. You need a blood test if you're really truly trying to get hold of sensitivities for foods. So thank you for spelling that out. I see you said you're allergic to onion and cinnamon from skin testing. That could be a topical reaction that you have as well. You may also have a sensitivity internally to those things, but I see so many times people get a skin test and it misses. Oh no, corn looks good and all these things that they're testing look okay. And then it pops up on a blood test. So just because it's safe on a skin test does not mean it is going to come up safe and unreactive on a blood test. I do prefer blood testing over skin for foods. Okay, so let's go into supplements. I could have put, you know, 100 different probiotic supplements that I like. It was really hard. This probably took me the longest in the presentation to pick probiotics because I wanted to give you some options. But every person has a different microbiome. Identical twins have a completely different makeup of what probiotics they need, what probiotics are maybe not so great for them, and what can truly replenish and restore the microbiome. Every person is different. So we guess. There's no test that look, I mean, remember I said there's 50 trillion and, you know, 30,000 different species. We don't have a test that looks at all of these different, your personal microbiome. We have some that can look at some different supplements, but certainly not everything. So orthobiotic, the one on the left is just a good general 20 billion probiotic. The one in the middle, this is a Dr. Perlmutter formulated supplement. He's the one that wrote Grain Brain and Brain Maker. This is a probiotic that has 2 specific strains in it that have been shown to help with mood. Plus it's got ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is one of my favorite adaptogenic herbs for stress. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm dealing with mood issues, but I'd also like the benefit of a probiotic in one, this is a good option for you. They also put prebiotic fibers in there. So it's a really good option to kind of get everything all in one. ProFlora 4R is more of a spore-based probiotic, and a spore-based probiotic is not for everybody, but they have been shown to be very resilient and really good at healing the gut. I would say though, the best thing to do first is going to be get some sort of testing to see what you specifically need as far as what you're missing in your gut. Not necessarily what probiotics you're missing, but what we need to improve on. Because if you have a bacterial overgrowth, you don't want to necessarily introduce a spore-based probiotic because it's going to feed into everything. So probiotics are great. Ideally, you work with a practitioner that can better know and understand your personal history and what would be best for you. But I have taken all of these and had good experience with all of those. I do like the ProFlora. For me, I mentioned all those sensitivities. I feel a difference with that one. So I do like it. But if you're just starting out, you've never taken a probiotic, something like the orthobiotic would be a really good one. Okay. Let's move on to enzymes. I use enzymes. Love them. They are a person with food intolerance's best friend. They do not help with food sensitivities. Again, that involves the immune system, but enzymes break down our food. We have enzymes in our saliva that start to break up carbs. So if you put a cracker in your mouth, it would start to dissolve and disintegrate. If you put a piece of chicken in your mouth, it's not going anywhere because our protein digestive enzymes start lower. So it just gives you a good idea of like how these help. They are in our stomach, plentiful, we produce them ideally. Now, as we age, we lose production of enzymes. So when I find people over 30, 40, 50 that never had digestive issues that now are, you could have a decrease in not just enzymes, but hydrochloric acid, stomach acid. We're so obsessed with blocking stomach acid, we forget how important stomach acid is to help absorb certain minerals and vitamins, B12, iron, calcium. You cannot get those in your system without acid. So when you're blocking it with these acid blockers and Tums and all this stuff, you're missing critical micronutrients. So you don't want to take hydrochloric acid if you're on one of those medications, but I have found a lot of people that have experienced reflux benefits from some of these products because they're bettering their digestion or getting reflux coming back up because their food's sitting there, it's fermenting, it's causing, and then it's coming back up. Whereas if they're bettering digestion, things can move where they need to go. Pure encapsulations, digestive enzymes is a good all around. Digest Gold is one of my favorite. It's one of the most comprehensive and powerful. It's got enzymes in there for lactose, for gluten, for every single food that there is. It's a great, very popular product. Digest Spectrum is more for someone with food intolerances. If I am eating out, I can try to order to what I know I'm sensitive to or intolerant to, but you never know. So I always take a Digest Spectrum because it has a high amount of enzymes to help with gluten. So if something was cooked on something that had gluten on it, this will protect me. You still have to be eliminating the food. These are safety nets. They can't replace a good elimination, but these are supporting breaking down your food. When you break down your food, it can move where it needs to go. It can absorb at a better rate. So whereas probiotics focus on regularity and healing the gut, helping absorption of nutrients, enzymes are starting first in the stomach to actually break down. If you get bloating after meals, enzymes can be a help for that. Okay. And then there's combination products. Products like GI Revive and GlutaShield. These products contain ingredients like zinc carnosine. Zinc carnosine has anti-ulcerative properties. It helps to protect the intestinal lining. It's been very strongly associated with decreasing inflammation. L-glutamine is one of the most abundant amino acids in our stomach lining. A lot of it is located there. So when we have a damaged gut, we need some glutamine to replenish, to repair that and help to heal. There is N-acetylglucosamine in there to protect the stomach lining. Things like DGL licorice and marshmallow, chamomile, very calming and soothing. So you would do, these are not forever supplements, but you could do a regimen, if you check with your practitioner, do a regimen by using one of these products a couple of times a day for like 2 months. Ideally, you're also eliminating trigger foods, eating a healthy diet, and then adding in these nourishing, healing supplements to really help the gut. And then that in store, once we heal that gut, that can help brain. You could also be doing things like stress management, like the dynamic neural retraining, and then you're hitting it from both ways. You're strengthening your brain, you're strengthening your gut, making that connection a lot more healthy. So again, I don't know your personal health history, so please just don't take these supplements blindly, but they can be used for a lot of people in a very, very beneficial way. If you are looking to purchase supplements, we use FullScript. FullScript is an online practitioner-grade dispensary. Please do not order supplements from Amazon. I have seen so many negative things. Even when they're sealed, they come, I open, like they have not, these pills don't look the same as what I know they should be. So this is a very specifically stored supplement. These were not kept in somebody's hot car that's then, you never know when you order on some of these sites. So FullScript, I trust. Great quality supplements. That is the link to our personal Kemper Cognitive Wellness FullScript page that you can sign up for and get 20% off through Memorial Day. We run a lot of sales through FullScript, so if you are on our email list, if you sign up for FullScript, you'll get alerted when we have sales. And I did create a little category, if you go onto FullScript, that says favorites, and if you click on the Gut Brain Seminar, it will have all of the supplements I talked about in this presentation. So you could have all the specific ones in that place. You can also then shop for anything that you're looking to purchase as well. So these are great options here, and it's always exciting when we can offer sales. So we have that going on through Memorial Day. Let me just see if there's any question. I see, does alkaline water neutralize acid in the stomach? So alkaline water is probably not going to be like potent enough to really, if you've got a lot of acid going on, if you have an overproduction, which is very rare. It's rare that someone all of a sudden is producing too much acid. I would guess if you're having acid issues, we need to correct some digestive imbalance with you rather than just kill the acid. But alkaline water is certainly a healthy thing that you can do. For some, they may see relief. I would try, if you have a lot of acid issues, like a DGL supplement. DGL is a type of licorice that is chewable, and so it heals like esophagus, it heals gut, it helps with acid issues, and you can find those. I'll add that to the favorites, I'll add just a DGL. It's in those combination products, but you could take it separately. So I'll add that to the Gut Brain Seminar favorites as well, as a good way to kind of protect, and so you don't feel that uncomfortable from acid. So again, that food sensitivity test, if you are interested in it, that 20% is good through June 19th. So please call us. You could also email us at info@kemperwellness.com. And then we have upcoming webinar, Memory Loss is Preventable. Dr. Nate Bergman, our doctor, will be presenting that. So feel free to register on our website, kemperwellness.com, or on Facebook. And that's going to take place on Tuesday, May 26th at 6:30. So thank you, everyone. If anyone has any other questions, I know we ran a little over, but please let me know, and I'd be happy to answer some of those. I think I lost here's my chat box. Okay.
Nikki, we had a question about children's books that can teach the kind of nutrition or encourage that you're teaching here.
Absolutely, yeah. You know what, let me get you some names of those. I would be happy to, if you want to provide your email to us, or I can get in touch with you, or maybe in a follow-up email, I can mention some of the books. I don't have any off the top of my head. Let's also post those on our
Facebook page.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I will do that as well. Yeah, I mean, the younger the better. Make them part of the cooking, make them part of the decision process. It's tough once they're in like teenage years and nothing's really been discussed until it's like, oh, you're 14 or 15. That's a tougher thing to get across. But right from the beginning, I like to encourage, like, first of all, talk to them about why. Make sure you are a good role model and example. I have a lot of parents that are saying, I want my kid to eat better, and I'll ask them, what does your diet look like? If they're not seeing good nutrition that you're eating, why are they going to do it? So you have to make sure you're a good example, make them a part of the process, make it fun, cut things up. Don't say, what vegetable do you want? Say, should we have purple carrots or broccoli tonight? And do you want to help me make it? Let's go shopping. Let me see what you're interested in. And those are ways that you can kind of teach them in a healthy way and encourage them. But yes, I will get you those book names for sure.
Nikki, you had one more question. Probiotics and prebiotics, do you need them both?
So you do need them both, but you don't necessarily need them both in one supplement. I think a lot of supplements are putting prebiotics in, but again, prebiotics we should be eating. You should be eating good prebiotic foods, because prebiotic foods are fiber. So fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, like that should be making up a huge part of your diet. So I know prebiotics, I've seen like prebiotic supplements, like just eat the foods. Personally, that's how I feel. Eat some garlic and onions and cabbage and then take your probiotic, versus having to have another fiber supplement or something. But if you're having issues with getting those kinds of foods in, you absolutely can get a probiotic prebiotic combination. I know the Dr. Perlmutter line that Dr. formulated, which I put one of the Mood ones on there, he's got probiotics in his as well. So a lot of companies now are starting to do that blend where they're adding a little bit. Thank you, Jan. I see your email. I will get you that list for sure. All right. Well, we are over, so I will let you all go. I thank you so much for sharing your afternoon with me. It's always a pleasure educating you guys on these various topics and helping to promote healthy eating. So I look forward to talking with you all again. If you have any questions, if you want any more info from us, you could check out our website. You can like us on Facebook, or you can call us at 216-337-1400. Thank you all. Take care.